So there we go, that's basically done. And to be honest, that's the best part of a day, obviously allowing for filler to dry as well, to get all this sorted out. So as you can see, we've got some dark areas, still got to take care of the insides as well, but we're all nice and smooth and tapered in. And as you can see, you might be able to see in these filler marks here, got a slight sink mark just as it runs in. Now that could have been obviously where we've plastic weld has pulled in, whatever it is, it's been taken care of. So it might be better to use a bit of super glue to do that type of thing. The air intakes themselves, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually probably bung up that back down the end of those, to be honest, to cover up that fan, and respray them white again, just down in there. And then I'm probably going to pour a little bit of clear down there and tip them out to give them that nice glossy effect. But what I'm going to do is let that dry overnight, to be honest, all of this to totally cure and go off. It's well worth going around polishing up these little areas. And then what you can do, if you grab yourself a bit of kitchen roll when you finish sanding with your sponges, and perhaps the way I do it, which is like using wet and dry to get a nice finish, you can just go around and clear some of that debris off of the actual model itself. Otherwise it's going to get into your paintwork at the next stage, which will be priming. But there we go, it's all done. I'm really happy with the way that's all come together. I haven't put on any of the metal self-adhesive stuff on the back end yet. I'm going to leave that totally to last. And what we're going to do next is get it all masked up, absolutely everything, and then we can go around and we can then get it all primed up, double check all our seams and joints, make sure we're all happy with them, and then we can then start getting some paint on. Okay, everything's now nice and dry on this. We're happy with how all this sanding and filling that we was talking about has gone on. Just done a little bit more with literally a very, very fine sanding stick, just with this one, just to polish it up, and it can get down into those intakes quite nicely, because we just want a nice smooth finish, so we need something with quite a fine grit on there to give us that effect. I just generally polished up all these areas. Now the thing is, we made a bit of a mess with the bays and things like that, so we're going to have to respray them, and we might as well do all the white work whilst we can. In the meantime, all I've done is stuck together the top canopy, a couple of drops of blue tack or white tack, just to hold it all in place, just like that, stop any spray getting in there too much. So what we can actually do is spray up these intakes as well. Now the thing is, we're going to spray it all just with white, and then we'll go back and mask it up with some 6mm Tamiya tape, just to give us that definition between the front end and the rear part. Now because obviously we've sprayed those fans which are deep down inside there, and we don't want them to sort of go white again, all we've got, a couple of bits of sponge, just got a lump of sponge here, offcuts. I don't know if you can see down in there, but we've got two in there. All I do is stick it in just like that, okay, and job done. And that'll protect that sponge from getting too much. Now, I've already got one down there, so we don't want two, but they are in there just to stop the overspray getting in. So what we're going to do, we're going to spray these bits white again, do the intakes and all those areas. At the meantime as well, we're going to do all the gear and bits and pieces like that, and also we're going to do the insides of the weapon bay doors, because obviously you're going to have them open and they're all sprayed white as well. Anything that needs to be sprayed white, we're going to do it now, and it just gets it all out of the way and job done. Normal thing spraying white as we did before. I'm going to use it neat for the first two coats, so we just flick the compressor on. Neat for the first two, and then after that we will thin it slightly to give it a sort of smoother, nice glossier finish, and then things like intakes and that, we'll swill them out again or stick a paintbrush down there with some clear acrylic gloss, something like Future, something like that, to do those. So, but the thing is, you need to make sure you get out all the debris which you may have caused by sanding. So if you get your airbrush in there, a soft brush, just to get in there and blow all those bits out, otherwise you're going to have them as texture on your paint. So what we'll do, we're just going to pour half a colour cut, because we're going to use quite a bit doing all of this, and then all we'll do is just spray this white. Happy with our flow. So we just redo these bays, which I've had quite a few coats now, but we want it to look right, and obviously the more coats it gets, the deeper your white is anyway, so it's not so much a bad thing. In there then, obviously when we're doing the intakes, we're going to do light passes, because some of it's heavier, some of it's prime, some of it's not. So we just do a couple of light little passes in there, and then we'll let them dry, come back, do them again. So we'll just do these bays, the wheel wells, little area just back there. And there we go. So what we can do, we'll leave that to one side. Then, as I say, I'll do them on the sprue because it's just a little bit easier. Obviously the main one down here is the one piece if you're going to have it closed. It's two piece if you're going to have it in the open sort of thing. And the same for the other bays as well. So what we can actually do, we'll just do the split ones open. Spray them white. Yeah, there is ejector pin marks on there, but they're quite shallow, and I think you're not going to see them because it's going to be in the up position. So we'll just do one little pass over them both first, because they aren't primed, and obviously that will work as a little bit of a priming effect. So we'll just do that, and then we're going to do the gear now, all the doors, everything else like that, and then come back and give it another coat, and so forth and so on. In the last one we will thin it down by about sort of 50-50 to do a nice glossy white finish. Okay, so we've arrived at the painting stage. As you can see, what you've done, we spoke about these briefly before, but you get two types of doors. You get the closed ones and the open ones for the main gear, the nose and everything. So what I've done, I've used all the closed ones and using them really as a masking thing. All I've done, usual thing, blob of blue tack in there or dough, and then just stick them on, and they're just roughly held in place just like that. So we're all ready to go. Just masked up as we need to do. Up here you might be able to see, I've got some of the other bits I've just sprayed earlier. So what we're going to do is prime this up now to get it all into being the same sort of colour. So for this I'm just using any acrylic grey paint I've got a lot of. So in this case I've actually got some Guns H335, which is a grey, which is always quite a handy one because other things tend to show quite nicely with it. So what we're going to do, we're going to put it in. We don't want it thick as it comes out, so what we're going to do is just thin it, not really massively thin, probably only add about sort of 2/3 paint to 1/3 of thinners. And then what we do, we just give this a quick mix about, just to mix the paint, just like so. What we do, we just flick our compressor on and the spray booth on, just like so. Bit noisy. Okay, check our spray. Happy that that's come out, and all we're going to do is just to start with lightly dust over, so we're just all a nice even tone everywhere. So this is where your spray booth comes in well, because when you're putting paint down like this, it is quite a messy type of process. Don't put it down too heavy to start with, we're just going to do it lightly and we'll build up the colours. But the idea, as said before, with the primer coat is it's going to do two things. It's going to show up any imperfections in your work, so then you can then go back and perhaps, you know, take care of them. And also it'll give something for the paint, the proper paint coat to stick to. So if we just do the underside here, we'll work around the nose area. Go. That's half the colour cut gone on there at the moment, so we just let that dry off. So we're just cutting to air and drying it down. At the same time, you might be able to notice up the air intakes here, I've got bits of foam. Now it's a bit tricky trying to get tape to lay down in the right places and all the rest of it, and for the primer coat as we're doing here, what I've actually done is just put foam up and roughly put it in the areas, and then what we'll do afterwards, we can mask up and just lightly spray in to make a nice sharper line. But for the moment I'm quite happy to leave it like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to carry on just priming this up. Okay, so that's all the primer coat done, and it's a very nice glossy type of surface. It's almost like a satin finish on that. So it's a nice finish, and we're very happy with that. Now the thing is, this is where it comes a bit complicated, and I think it's worth spending a little bit of time talking about it. Now, if you look at different photos of the Raptor, certainly the early photos showed them just being the standard sort of grey combat colours. I think that was more for the prototypes and all the rest of it, and obviously there's a lot of photos of them around now. The photos that are coming down from the air shows of the more active squadrons, as these are now, shows it with a metallic finish. So that's really what we're going to try and achieve with this to make this more of an operational one. The other thing as well with the Raptor, if you look at different photos of different aircraft, they all are slightly different. This particular shot here shows it being, I think, basically factory fresh, very light areas, obviously with the nose and the leading edges and the bits and pieces like that. Whereas if you look in this photo here, you can see that the nose area was very, very dark. Certainly the leading edges, that light grey area that you see all around the edges of this isn't so noticeable. So I presume it's wearing down, just a bit like if you look at F-16 noses. It's a classic. If you get a row of them in the line, some of them are very light grey, some of them are dirty. That's where they just build up the dirt. If you've ever felt one and touched one, they almost feel like rubber, and they obviously absorb a lot of dirt and a lot of weathering. I'm assuming that the Raptor is doing the same and has leading edges areas, and this area around the wings and nose is that sort of RAM, the radar absorbent material, which does weather and dirty quite a lot because it's almost got a rubbery texture to it where it can absorb radar instead of bouncing it back. So I'm sure that's the same type of effect as we're getting here, and that's why you get the different photos. Obviously the other thing as well is in that second photo, a lot of metal areas. There again, I'm assuming they're touch-ups and all the rest of it, which is something I'm going to have a go at doing on this one to give it a little bit more depth and to make it a little bit more interesting to the eye. Now, certainly for that metal sheen, it is a metallic type of paint with the aircraft, and it was obviously to do with somewhat of its radar characteristics of avoiding radar. It's absorbing or reflecting it using that type of new paint. It's obviously not very well known and documented at this point, so we were just making a lot of guesses here, but there's a couple of ways you could do it. Now, I can't mention the company because I haven't heard anything definitive back from them yet, but there's a very famous metal effect paint company who are supposedly bringing out the colours for this one, but as I say, I haven't heard anything directly back from them about it, so really I can't mention it at the moment just in case they don't go through with it. But certainly they were supposedly making a metal colour paint for this, so it's going to be a grey metally effect. Another way you can do it, if you use a certainly something like an Alclad, and mix this with another lacquer-based grey paint, you could probably make up that type of effect. And I know there's some guys on the net have done fantastic jobs with that to give it that type of effect, and various things like that. The way I'm going to do it, I'm going to stick with the actual official sort of Raptor colours, which is the Modern Eagle sort of greys and that. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give it quite a blow-in with chrome right over the top, a sort of airborne one to give it a metallic feel to it, but obviously it's not enough for it to look silver. So it's something we'll do at the end, and I'll show you how I'm going to do it to give it that sort of metallic effecty way of doing it. But we can do that as we do in these metal areas and things like that. So we're going to dust this thing with a chrome, an Alclad chrome, just to give it that metal type of effect. Hopefully it will give us that type of effect we're really looking for, of being really reflective on an angle, but certainly on a flat you can't really see it. So that's the type of thing. So what we're going to do now, we're going to pre-shade this as if we do any other model. So we're going to get going with some black pre-shading, which we're going to do next, and then we're going to get the combat colours on. Okay then, so on with the actual pre-shading. So what we'll do, if we start it over here, start with somewhere where we know. All we're going to do, we're going to pick out all the panel lines. Now there's not many on here, so we're not going to worry too much. Air pressure is about 20 psi. It's a 50-50 mix with Tamiya XF1 black and Tamiya X28 thinners. And then all we're going to do, we're just going to pop in some panel lines, and we're going to go quite nice and thick because this is going to have a lot of paint onto it, and we want it to look the business. So we're doing these panel lines quite thick on this. We're not doing them too fine. Let me just bring you out a bit. So as you can see, but I want them nice and wide so it gives a nice subtle effect. I don't want sharp little lines appearing through the paint. I want them to sort of almost seamlessly blend into each other, because obviously it's going to be a nice shiny finish on this. So by doing the panel lines slightly, these pre-shading slightly wider, it'll fade a little bit better. If you do tiny hard little sharp lines, then the chances are they're going to show through and be a little strong. We want this to be a nice tonal variation, and what happen is the center of the panels, like in here, will naturally be lighter because of the pre-shading, so we won't have to really go back and sort of lighten up and bleach out each of the center panels, if you know what I mean. So we're just gonna go round it all like this. Okay, so we've got probably a little bit more than a 50-50 mix of thinners to paint, so i.e. we're a little bit more thinners to paint. Okay, then what we're going to do is lightly mist this on. It's a little bit spitty because it's quite a thin coat. We're just misting this on because we want a nice fine mist. We're just going to up the air pressure a little bit up to about sort of 30 psi so we can mist this on. So remember, with all pre-shading, it does disappear when you first put paint on it, and then we'll come through. And we're not worried about the camo because we'll come back and put a coat through that. And there we go, and you can probably see the pre-shading still showing through quite a bit. So we're going to do everywhere apart from the nose, really. Just make sure you do the edges, otherwise you end up with different colours of paint. Okay, so as you can see, we're to this colour to that, so it's quite a difference. So flip over and we'll do the underside. And then remember, we're going to have to spray the real bay doors, because obviously these ones here are just the solid temporary closed ones. Okay, cut into air just to dry down a bit. Back to paint, we just used half the colour cut there. You can see already, you can see the pre-shading showing through quite nicely, and then obviously on the underside it's still wet. So we'll just stand that up here for a moment and we'll knock up some more paint and we'll carry on putting this on. Okay, having this dried now for the last hour, we can now get on with the top coat. Now for this one we're going to be using extra acrylics again, which is their modern eagle grey colour, which is XA1157, which is the equivalent to FS16176. So we just check our spray pattern. We're happy with that, how that is. Now obviously, you know, we've done lots of these things in the past about spraying different camos. You can mask up, you could use blue tack and go round and things like that. You know, if you're happy with your spraying, you can then do it freehand, and that's how I'm going to do it. Now you can roughly trace the area you're going to do, or whichever way, but what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put the model to my side so I can see, because obviously I'm doing it from this angle. I've got the sheet instructions, I'm going to put them on the same angle as well. Okay, and then what we're going to do, I'm going to follow the same pattern. Now it's only going to be roughly to start with, and then what I can actually do then is go around and tidy it all up afterwards. So we're happy with our flow and how it all is. So what we're going to do, we're going to do the centre spine one first. I'll just move a few things out of the way so I've got a nice clear run. We're going to do the centre spine first, and then we can go out and do these outer areas. So the main thing is to roughly work out how it's all going to go. Now this one's quite a wide one, and it's going to come down and then follow round and tighten in. So that's where we're going to start. So we're going to squirt into the middle of it, obviously not to the outside. Check your flow just before you start. Now we're shooting this at quite a high air pressure, so what we're going to do is just turn this down a little bit, down to about 25. That's it. Down to about 25 psi. Okay, and we're just going to tidy this up a little bit. Okay, and we're just going to fill in little circular movements just to bring it in. Then we're going to check our reference, and then it slides up nice and tight, and then sort of bends round again. So that's the same way we're going to do it here. And as I say, if I rotate my paper the same, I can see roughly how it goes. So that's how we are. We're coming through, and then we're going to wrap it nice and neat in here, and then come out wide. A little bit more pressure, it's dropped a little bit. Coming in just like that, and then it pans out, blowing through. Okay, then it sort of squares up for this back area. Then what we're going to do is just going to fill in this bit. Up the centre spine. And just little swirly patterns just back filling in. Then what we can do, we can go in and afterwards and sharpen this up, but this is how we've got at the moment. Okay, and then we're going to run around our other areas. So if we do this part as it runs down, so we can do this leading edge wing, so we know it runs behind this diamond just down here, and then it wiggles upwards. So what we'll do is we'll take it from behind the diamond, and back around, and it's quite a tight join. Just fill in here. As I say, this is quite a rough job, and it's quite a warm day today, so every now and again what we can do is just clean the end of the needle off to make sure it's nice and sharp. Just sound like that, so we're getting the light pattern going. Okay, then we're going to swing this one around just like that. Okay. Blow in this central area. So we're just filling in this middle part, plenty of paint in the middle, and as we get nearer the edge we'll just slow our spray down. As I say, then we can go round and we can tighten all this spray pattern up, but that's just getting us how we're looking. I'll continue now and get the rest of it all sprayed, and then we can come back and tighten this pattern up. Okay, so you have your basic pattern and you're all happy with it, and what I've been doing here by still using the references admittedly, is we've got the lighter colour back in, and all we're doing is just going around making a nice sharp little line and trying to follow the pattern more sort of accurately. Now the thing to remember is a lot of these in real life, they're slightly variations on pattern, and they have touch-ups and obviously where they're sort of weathering and all the rest of it. So all we're doing here is really just sharpening in the pattern. So basically make sure, nice clean nib, we're about 20 psi, quite a thin mix. We're probably about 3/4 thinners to paint, and all we're doing is literally just going around touching in the pattern, and then we're just sort of backfilling any little overspray areas that we may have, and generally blending it in so it all sort of looks nice, and making sure there's no funny marks and that we're somewhat like the pattern. Now as I say, it's pretty hard to follow the pattern, but doing it this way, it just gives us a bit of an easier time to get round. So there we go, we're just following it round, and we've got a little bit in between where we separated these blues a bit. And what you can do, you can adjust and change the pattern and put little scoops in like there. We've just moved it slightly as you need to. And it's a lot easier because you can check against your references and come back and see how it's looking and like that. So really, that's about it. So we're doing the same, or have been doing the same, with all the tails and the various bits and the surfaces on the rear, just to make them a bit more realistic and sharper looking. So I'm quite happy with that. So what we'll do is pour that back in. So there, we'll keep that. Give the airbrush a clean out. We'll let this sit for about sort of half an hour to totally dry off, but that's our basic outline of the camo. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and just fade a few little areas just to sort of give it a sort of more weathered look like I do, but I want it to dry a little bit first, because as I say, we put in paint layers on paint layers, we're starting to build up a little bit and it's going to get tacky, and obviously we're going to be handling it to move it. So we'll let it dry off, come back and do a little bit of lightening of the panels.